Hey everyone, if you are looking to tap into a cool new niche that can take your private practice to six figures or more, check out my guy Derek Collins at court-mandatedtraining.com. He helps licensed therapists expand their practices by working with court-mandated clients. So if you are burnt out, tired of writing notes, dealing with insurance companies, I highly recommend that you check out what Derek has to offer. He can show you how to get paid cash every day through court-mandated evaluations and classes like anger management, domestic violence, substance use, shoplifting, theft prevention, and more. This niche can be a breakthrough that you have been looking for. Go to court-mandatedtraining.com and watch the free webinar to get started. Remember, that is court-mandatedtraining.com. Hey everyone, you are listening to another episode of the All Things Private Practice podcast. I'm your host, Patrick.Casale, coming today from sunny St. Pete, Florida, where it is 75 degrees. I am joined today by the co-founders of ZynnyMe. We've got Kelly Higdon, we've got Miranda Palmer, both LMFTs in California, and they are going to talk about their story and how they were kind of the pioneers of private practice coaching and building. And I'm just really happy to have you both here.
Pioneers, I don't know about that.
I'm not sure about that. We were definitely, I think Casey Truffaut was the pioneer.
Lynn Grotsky
were more of the pioneers. However, I think
been around a while though.
We've been around a real long time, and the other pioneers have mostly retired and left. And I think we did things in kind of a new and different way that went beyond what they had been doing. So.
But thank you for that introduction.
Yes.
We know the people have gone before us.
Yeah, for sure.
I like that you named that you're like, wait. Like, we've been around a while. We know our stuff, but like, we got to give some credit over here too.
Yeah.
I totally respect that.
We got 25 years between us, and that there's still more people out there. I think this is the other part too, is we did not set out to buck the system. We weren't trying to we're going to do something amazing and great initially. I think we both stumbled into this in a really heartfelt and just joyful way of just seeing a need and wanting to be of service and having a need ourselves and wanting it to be filled. And this is sort of what happens with that, plus a lot of intention, a lot of mistakes, a lot of planning along the way.
The other day, we were sitting in the office and we have to add 401k plans and things like this, right? And I was saying to Miranda, when we first started, I didn't dream this big. And while I really do encourage my clients to dream, I also tell them hold it loosely, you hold it, but then you're also open to all the possibilities you never thought of, because my mind could not have imagined where we are now. I could not have thought that's how it would go. So kind of funny.
How does that feel to see that and reflect back on I left my agency job or wherever you started your practice journey to now?
That was a few.
I mean, right? For me, I think it's always funny. My process started in terms of becoming a somebody or having community because I failed a licensing exam.
Mm-hmm.
I failed a licensing exam by one point. Nobody I knew was studying for exams. Everyone I knew who had passed was I don't know what to tell you. And I just felt really lost and alone and had this random idea to start an online study group and start bringing people together. Maybe 4 months later, somebody in the study group was like, hey, is this a joke? I got this letter in the mail saying there was something wrong with the test and I actually passed. There was 4 of us that had all failed by 1 or 2 points. And this group of 40 people that I rounded up from the internet. I was marketing a study group. I didn't know I was marketing. I was doing this, and through the process, suddenly I was like, oh my gosh, found out about this, would not have found out, never actually got the letter in the mail, but I called the board and they're like, how did you find out about this? This doesn't impact everyone. And they're like, but give me your name. They're like, yeah, actually you're on the list. And here's your next step. Just send us your money and you're done. And it was such a experience of what it brings to bring together people from, at that point, it was all over California. And it wasn't just the exam process we were struggling with. It was the counting of the hours and what to do about supervision. And now it's about private practice and all the other things. And so I was just this is so powerful and it's so valuable to me and I want to keep giving back. And so it really just started from there of this is a community that I need and want, and I want to provide support and I want to give back to the people coming. And so it was just that for a long time, realistically, like that was for several years, was just in that place. And I think, I learned a lot about community and about how people come together and what it means to just be other focused. And yeah, it was just kind of that magical thing. But again, even that, like I wouldn't like that was one of those moments in time. Failing that exam, I could not have imagined that like that moment, like my stomach dropped and just, crying. And I had to go to a family event and everybody knew I was taking the exam and like walking in and just being like feeling like the lower. And everyone's like, oh, did you know how to go? You passed? I'm like, nope, I failed. And they're like, they just start laughing. They're like, no, you didn't. And I was like, no, I really failed. And my grandma was like, there must be something wrong. If my Mandy failed it, that's what my grandma calls me. There must be something wrong with the test. And I was like, thanks, grandma, but like, it's not a thing. Except she was freaking right. It was a thing. And
But I mean, that point to this point,
yeah.
wow. I mean,
Yeah.
learning to step into owning that we've done this it's still a practice that we're trying to make. Because when you are, when you're running your own business, you get really into what's next, what's next, what's next, instead of just saying, oh, look what is, because it is quite amazing. And to think about the impact I try not to think about, because I think I would get kind of a little stunned when I think about like how many people are reading this email or
Yeah.
how many people might listen to this podcast. I don't think about it. Otherwise, I'd be like, oh,
Yeah. Like I look at things and like we didn't even track our stats on our podcast. Our podcast's been around for a long time. We did not track it for the first. And it's just like, oh, like there's millions of views. Like how many millions more are there?
I don't want to know.
Like, so like, oh, this is how many people. Like there's been over 100,000 people who've come through our email newsletter over the years that like we have presented at, dozens of places and done hundreds of webinars and all of these different things. And I was talking with someone recently and they're like, oh no, I remember I found out about you while I was in grad school. And the first thing that I did when I graduated was I joined your business school. And now they're running a private practice summit that I get to go and speak at. Like that level of like, oh my gosh, I really have been around a minute. Like they joined our business school, created their successful practice, created another stream of income. And now that's a part of things that they're bringing people together. And they're part of that next generation. Is that right?
Next generation.
The next generation. Yeah. Which is great. And it's lovely to support them.
Yeah.
I love that. And I like the humility too on, I can sense like, yeah, I'm not looking at the views. We're not here for that. We're just realizing like our support has trickled down and has reached so many people. And the more people we help, the more people they help. And in reality, it's just really incredible to think about it that way. And it's so interesting now that we're moving into the era of like a different way of psychotherapy and people wanting to add to their businesses. And I don't think a lot of people really understand how applicable our skill sets are in so many different ways. And more importantly, when you're leaving an agency job, all you think about is just leaving your agency job. Like you're not actually thinking about what else is possible because you really don't know.
I think this is the part that's so interesting. And that I think, I know this isn't where you're going, but it's where my mind goes, is people are so in the place of wanting to get out of feeling, not valued or devalued, feeling burnt out, feeling like they're just running around, but feeling like the rules are constantly changing. And what I see happen a lot is that people are kind of leaving that. And because they haven't stopped to kind of pause and explore, and this is even like their own part of it, like where were the places where I didn't set boundaries, where I didn't set limits, where are the places where I had unrealistic expectations of myself, not just what came from this other person, where the places have I internalized this broken system? Because whether I get a job at another place, whether I start a private practice, whether I start another stream of income or 7 streams of income, the odds are that if I don't understand what just happened and heal from it and get some like actual like perspective of what a healthy business or a healthy position looks like, I'm going to replicate that. I'm going to build that in to every stream of income. And so
I did. Like when ZynnyMe first started, I'm a workaholic in recovery and I ended up in the hospital. So, I mean, like it is that we've gone through that in our own peeling of the onion from the beginning of like, oh, that's there. And oh, that's there. And tried to find ways to really create a business that supports our health and well-being through it all, to undo and allow for that healing.
Because I think one of the reasons that a lot of therapists have multiple streams of income and they have side hustles is because they're not being honest about what they need from their first hustle, from their actual main business. And instead of creating a solid, functioning, profitable business that takes care of their financial needs, they are creating these businesses that replicate, oh, I couldn't just work for the agency and be okay. I had to get a second job over here and work weekends over here and sell Tupperware over here. So now I'm going to replicate that, right? I literally sold Tupperware. With their portion of
I did not know
as
you
a
sold that.
as a licensed therapist. Yeah.
I didn't know you
Yeah,
sold Tupperware.
I did. I did Tupperware when I had my son. That's why I have so much Tupperware in my house.
I'm glad you weren't like selling knives door to door like one of those ridiculous side hustles, but you're so right. Like, the industry, obviously, we feel really undervalued, underappreciated. And I think there's almost an emotional abuse relationship with agency jobs where it's consistent, you know what you're going to get, but it's really damaging to you mentally and physically. And there's a detox period too when you leave those jobs and have to really, like you said, sort some stuff out and work through a lot so that you don't bring that shit into the next venture. And again, like you said, just replicate the agency environment in your own business, because that's why I think we see so many people burnt out right now, in addition to COVID and every fucking everything happening. But like, it's just like, I'm going to leave. I'm going to see 40 clients a week. I'm going to work from this perspective. And then you're like, I don't want to be a therapist anymore. I can't do this.
Right. Right. And this is the piece too it's kind of crazy making, that you have this experience of realizing like, oh my gosh, like what I was doing wasn't working. Right. But also this like strong desire of, I want to do a sliding scale like the nonprofit did. Now the nonprofit had $1 million or $7 in grants to provide that sliding scale. But I'm going to somehow figure out
And in the gap.
how to meet the people that my nonprofit with $7 million couldn't even meet, but I'm going to meet this right here. Oh, hey, you know what? There's not enough people to refer on insurance panels. Everybody's full. You know what? I'm going to stand in the gap. It doesn't matter that the fee that I've calculated would need to be 3 times what this insurance company is willing to reimburse. And instead of looking at it and going, these for-profit insurance companies in 2021, do you know how, like collectively, how much profit they made?
Hundreds of millions, I believe, potentially billions.
72 billion, more than Amazon. Health insurance companies. And obviously there's more health insurance companies than just one Amazon, like that's spread over several different health providers, but they made more money than Amazon during a global pandemic. And here we are as therapists not doing the math to say, you know what, if I have half of my clients are insurance and half of them are private pay, and if my math says I need to make $100 a session and the insurance company is going to give me 50, then that means that I have to charge the people who are coming in private pay 150 so that those people can subsidize the insurance company that made $70 billion. It's freaking bonkers. And again, if therapists think about dropping insurance panels or saying, you know what, that contract doesn't work for me. And let's be clear, it is not across the board. In certain states,
Equitable.
there are amazing insurance contracts. There's amazing laws that protect therapists. The clawbacks are, within a year or two, it's not a big deal. But in other states, unlimited clawbacks for, 2, 6, 10, 15 years, just crazy things where in LA, $70, right? Reimbursement for the same CPT code that in Arkansas is $130. Where's the cost of living? Like
they don't care.
They don't
It's about
care.
competition.
It's about how many of us as therapists say yes to a contract, not understanding, and we're just like, well, this is just how it has to work. So I'm just going to figure out how to budget myself out of this. And then we have more therapists in like Debtors Anonymous and these other places feeling guilt and shame about how they didn't budget properly. Well, God bless it.
Mic drop. I hope whoever's listening to that, really absorbs that, because you're so right. And I think so many times with like our bleeding heart syndrome, we want to subsidize other people's therapy, but then we can't keep our lights on. And then you're wondering.
And we can't afford our own therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
We-
how often do you hear that? Like, I could never pay my therapist private pay rates, and I can't charge private pay because I can't afford to pay private pay. And I'm like,
Well,
y'all,
got to change what you're making so that you can. And also, like, and this is another reason why people then say, well, I'm going to do coaching, I'm going to do courses because that will subsidize this issue. And our argument is like, this needs to be addressed. Otherwise, as long as we continue to say yes to it, it will continue.
And we'll replicate it in the course.
Yeah, we will.
We'll undercharge for the course. We will burn ourselves out working all the hours because the doing of the course, like putting the material together, like that's easy. But the marketing and building the community and going through the other, like all the rest of it, like people do not, they're like, oh, it's fine. It's just the beta of it. You spend
yep.
300 hours on the beta of it. And that's coming from somewhere. That's either coming from your health, your social life, that's coming from your family, your kids, your rest, your sleep. Like it's coming from somewhere. And here we are as therapists just in this place of, again, burnout rates are high. Autoimmune conditions are really high right now. And that's not something people are talking about a lot. And that's not to blame therapists, but we take on a huge amount of stress and trauma in what we do. We're taking on people's energy, and our body needs some time to like process that out, to breathe it out, to walk it out, to work it out, whatever the thing is that we need to do. And if we keep our brain moving constantly, and sometimes this can be a trauma response. Often this is a trauma response. This is part of where this burnout and trauma have some like overlap and they kind of like all tie together. If we don't understand that that's what we're doing, then suddenly that like, oh my gosh, I've got all this energy to do this course and what have you, and I'm really disorganized. We don't realize this is a flee response. This is a flee response, right? Oh my gosh, I can't say no. I'm scheduling clients all over the place and I'm seeing 10 people over my max and I'm saying yes to every sliding scale. This is a fawn response, right? And it's
Absolutely.
we like understand what's happening and we pause for a minute. The crazy part is that it impacts clinical care. Like at the core of it, and that's the other really uncomfortable thing that we don't like to think about because we already hold so much guilt and shame that like if we don't look at these things, ultimately our profession and our individual clients are the ones that get impacted long term.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. I have so many of these conversations with therapists now, my coaching and all over, and it's a lot of the same response over and over. And it's also the misunderstanding of people will pay you if they value what you offer, and you can charge any amount of money you want to charge and subsidize, by giving a few hours away or giving a pro bono slot away or like evening the scales, so to speak, if that's really something that you want to do. And I just think that if you're going to take on 40 clients at $50 an hour and you're exhausted and then your substance use goes way up and your mental health is deteriorating, you could really take a look at your business and step back and get really, work through your shit and figure out your rates and work a quarter of the time or work half the time so that you can show up for your clients and you can show up for other parts of your life, because workaholism and giving it away is so synonymous with the helping professions in general. And I mean, this has been a hard couple of years and it's definitely being seen and felt all over the place.
Sure.
I think
I think we've watched a lot of changes in the industry since we've started and where therapists are at in terms of knowledge, in terms of growth. And this is a new kind of phase of burnout like we've never seen before. We've been seeing the autoimmune stuff creeping up.
mhm.
Even before the pandemic, we've been seeing it a lot more. And the beginnings of burnout before the pandemic. So I think, and then a
Yep,
lot of
what's
the
that?
social justice issues coming up as well, like the compounding effect of timing. It's an interesting time. It was a time like when we first started where even having this conversation would set people off, like talking about a fee. Ooh, like angry.
Still does.
So, yeah, but I feel like people at least are a lot more open to dialoguing. We've seen a lot of growth in therapists. And so I think we're at a really cool pinnacle where we could tip the scales to, as a collective, heal some of this and change what the standard or the norm is. This is a great opportunity right now for us.
I think it's an interesting piece because, and this is going to sound, I'm going to stand for something that like a lot of people are going to hate. I think there are a lot of therapists that are looking at side hustles and multiple streams of income. And it is distracting them from where they really need to be. And until we figure out the core of a profitable service-based business that is sustainable, I don't think you should be going out to do the side hustle, the coaching and all the other stuff. I think that's a distraction. I think it's sort of like playing the game on your phone. I think it's this place of we as a collective need to really heal that money story. And we need to heal our relationship as business owners and as creators. And once we do that, then I think it's going to open up to so many ways of having these other
That'll be more
resources
effective.
that will be effective, that'll actually be seen by people and be sustainable. But I think until people really get to the core of that stuff, it's just they're going to have 70 unfinished projects and they're going to have 17. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, you know what? I had an even better idea. Oh, no, I had an even better idea. Oh, no, I feel guilt and shame because I didn't finish those ideas. So I'm going to finish this idea and I'm going to, you know what I need is a business partner and this person, we're going to do this magical thing together. And we're only going to charge $50, but we're going to have all this impact. You know what? I'm going to speak at this thing.
Let's talk about
And
this partnership.
like, yeah. Like, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to create this thing and I'm going to speak at this one thing and it's going to like take over and it's going to take off. So I've got to do this right now and ignore my private practice. And we're like,
No.
you just know that like, this is not how it works. But I think until we kind of pause and sit and like kind of like look at our lane and look at our area of the road and really just feel what it feels like to even just enjoy our business, even just for like 3 to 6 months, y'all. Like just 3 to 6 months of like,
hold it.
of like, hey, my practice is full. I have a process. I'm seeing my clients. I was able to, I'm keeping up my bookkeeping. I have the things like streamlined and I'm not putting anything else on myself just for 3 months. But the amount of therapists that can do that for 3 minutes that don't just immediately say, okay, cool, next thing. Okay, cool, next thing. That's burnout.
And that's
Like,
also been our lesson in building
Oh,
ZynnyMe of like, what is our thing? And we stay in that lane and knowing there's lots of different things to coach on, lots of different ways. And just over the years, getting more honed in. It's taken this long to get really honed in on what do we do well, and perfecting that before we add another thing. Trust me, we have like a parking lot of ideas. They're brilliant.
They're $1 billion brilliant ideas, but like ultimately, what do we see as the main thing? It's a business school for therapists because therapists need some business school. They need this base level of knowledge that's going to transform every little thing that they do. And people are like, oh, well, why don't you just do this standalone training here and this little training here? It's like, because people need the whole picture. If we just talk about the money story without the other pieces, it doesn't work. If we just talk about the website without the money, it doesn't work. If we just talk about the marketing without talking about the website and the money, it doesn't work. It's like it needs to, for us, we're holistic and we're also talking about personal boundaries. We're talking about clinical boundaries. We're talking about clinical outcomes and we're integrating it all together so that when people leave or leave complete, process through that we know they are going to be happier humans. They're going to be better therapists, like exemplary therapists that get amazing outcomes that go above and beyond, that their money story is completely shifted and changed, that they build their business with ease, that they are kind and have energy for other people. Like we just know what that looks like. And it's a magical thing. And there's nothing else that does that for us, that we can do that unless we do it in this intensive and holistic way.
Yeah, I love the intentionality behind that and just having something that feels like a well-oiled machine so that every time the therapist can get a very solid, high quality experience. And I think that's really important because there are so many people with shiny object syndrome, right? Like I can be guilty of that because I have so many ideas all the time. My brain's always going and my VA will check me on Mondays and be like, we're not doing anything new, right? Like this is what we're doing. So I'm trying to get a lot better at that. But ultimately, yeah, I think what you're saying is so important. And I preach that all the time. Like you've got to treat your business like a business. And 99% of therapists don't understand the business side and they get really shameful about that. And, there's so many moving pieces and it has to be synchronistic in terms of like things have to flow together, processes have to work, systems have to work. I mean, it's just so important. And you're right. Everything has to be talked about. And I think if you're just focusing on one thing, it's very challenging to come away with having a good conceptualization of what this is going to look like. I think that's such a really important part. I do want to ask y'all, and I know you get this question all the time. One, how the hell did you come up with this name? And two, how does it work as partners? Because I've talked with Kate and Katie, and they kind of described it as it has to almost be like a marriage. And in a lot of ways, like you have to have an exit plan that you both agree on. And I'm just curious about that. Like over the years, what have you seen shift and how has that been, not only challenging, but also really powerful too?
We were talking about this on our run last week.
Yeah. You've sacked a lot of questions.
Well, let's
there.
start with
Let's start with the name because I feel like you get that a lot.
So when I started the study group, it was on Yahoo Groups, and I used my email address, which was zinny@yahoo.com. And the Zinny was just a random thing that popped into my head one day. I had no idea. I was probably like 18, 19. Like, I don't know. It had been around for a long time. And so then when we decided to start the business together, Uriah Guilford actually was like, oh, everybody knows you as like Zinny from the study group. You should totally like, that's super cool. You could do something different. We're like, yeah, that'd be cool. Now we're just like, that was dumb, but like, whatever. And then Zinny.com was taken. It is still taken to this day. I emailed them, someone like in Asia has it, has never used it. And I was just like, can I please have it? So then we were looking at like, well, then how can we do it? Is it going to be like Zinny.tv? And there was a Zinny.me. And she was like, well, why don't we just do like ZynnyMe? And we're like, and then it'll be like a verb, like ZynnyMe, like transform me, empower me, which is ZynnyMe. Like, it's ridiculous, whatever. But
it's a good lesson of like how not to name your business.
But it's now a search keyword.
It is a search keyword, and it's often misspelled as a search keyword, which is even funnier. So
yeah,
it's great.
So
it's a good lesson in business naming. It's also a good lesson in like marketing and branding too, because you're right. It's well associated.
That name.
You can like it's not a great name. But and yet we've been able to brand it. It was harder for us at starting out in creating that brand. We actually for a little while we really made ourselves the face of it, and we saw things blow up at that point. And then we've been working towards kind of moving that back into a brand so that we can bring other people on. We have some amazing coaches that we have trained that are like amazing, that we've been one-on-one coaching for years. And to be able to bring those people in, just having it be like Kelly and Miranda, like doesn't do it justice of what we want to provide for people. So yeah.
In terms of like a partnership, I think a lot of people assume that Miranda and I are really close friends and we started this business together. We barely knew each other. I had hired Miranda to do coaching for my own practice. And then I started giving feedback on like, why could you automate some of this into a course? And this seems kind of repetitive. And what opinion they ask for you? And, and so she's like, yeah, I'd love to do that, but I can't, I need support. Like it's too much for one person or whatever. So we had only met in person once. And it was over some random dinner. And that was it. And
we lived on opposite sides of the state.
Yes. I will say the beginning years, there are tears. There is a lot of like learning about each other when you're running a business virtually apart and you don't know each other. Like, and through that and through leaning in on it has been, we're family, basically. Our kids have grown up together. We do trips together. And there is a deep, deep love there. But that's taken time to grow that and to have trust. And yes, it is like a marriage. It is harder for us to divorce than it has been for Miranda to divorce her husband. And it's true. It is, it's a lot more to undo. And there's a lot of conversations. I will say this, other people who have worked with us, like in partnerships and saying things like this, they've all said the level of communication it takes for a partnership, they don't want it. Because it does. Like, I have to let her know what's going on. She has to let me, we divide and conquer, but we also divide and conquer the P&L and like the income gets divided too. And when we make decisions, we have a process and we've gotten clear about that. Now we do a lot more meditation, intuitive kind of stuff. But if there's like I want this, sometimes it's like, I don't care. That's fine. And other times I'm like, ooh, no, I don't. And we have to work through that. And we use a lot of tools for that, which has come from our own growth and maturation too. I think, we're very, very lucky. And that's why when people come into our business school and they're like, I have a partner, we're like, people look at us and they're like, see, partnerships, cool. And we're like, this was sheer luck. Sheer luck and
Sheer luck or like being loved by the universe,
yeah,
like
whatever.
something like what have you, because this should not have gone the way that it.
But we've also made a lot of effort
Yeah.
to fostering this relationship. We
Yeah.
put a lot into it and a lot of like honest conversations, which we've gotten a lot better at. And I was telling Miranda, like last week we were running because we're training for a race. And I was like, like I never would have thought that we'd get here, like with our business, but also with each other of like the kind of love that we have. Like, that's my person. That's my ride or die, and you have to have like really serious conversations. Okay, if I die, how are you going to take care? Like, what goes to my family and
Yeah.
what does that look like? I mean, it's a lot. So,
Yeah.
we're very like people. Sometimes we're really on it about the partnership thing. We're like, do you know their credit score? Do you know how they handle money? Like,
Yeah.
you need to know all of these.
Like how much money is in their bank account? And they're like, what do you mean? We're like, what's their credit score? What do you mean? You are marrying this person. You're going to have a shared credit score and their decisions are going to impact you. And again, it's harder to divorce this person than it is to divorce a spouse. And we have helped more therapists get out of bad business partnerships than we have helped them create great ones. And it's not because and again, not because we're saying like, oh, it can't be done. But when we start to say, here are the steps and here's what needs to happen, people suddenly go, oh, well, I thought it would be more like this. And we're like, no, it's like this. And they're like, I don't want that. I'm like, that's okay. But just like know that.
I think what makes partnerships amazing is when you are opposite. It adds more conflict sometimes and there's more opportunity for misunderstanding. But the genius is that like when I'm down, it's just like marriage. When I'm down, Miranda's up. When Miranda's down, I'm usually up. And if we're both down together, when we're like, okay, we need to time out to figure out what's going on. But like she has strengths in technical and in branding, and I have strengths in relationships and connecting. And so being opposites has really helped us a lot.
Yeah.
It's really beautifully said, and I can sense how close you two are together, like just the way you talk and the way you communicate. I really love that. And, I see so often like people want partnership because they think it's going to be less scary. People want partnership
know.
because they're like, I'm going to start this business with this friend of mine who I kind of know through grad school because I don't think I want to start a private practice on my own. And I'm like, hell no, like you better check in with all of the details that you just mentioned, because otherwise this is going to implode or explode. And
Anything. I feel more scared because
yeah,
I'm responsible now also. Like I can make a decision that plummets Miranda's life. I don't like, that's a lot more on the line than, hey, I made this for me and it plummeted me. Okay, fine. But now I've like ruined somebody else. Like, I don't want that. That's a lot. It's a lot of like, it's actually scarier, I think, in some ways. We don't want
a lot of fucking pressure.
If you don't want to be alone, get some really good friends. Like get a mastermind together, find a mentor. You don't have to marry them.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to do that. There's lots of ways.
That's a great metaphor too of like, just because you're lonely doesn't mean you need to get married. Like that's because you're lonely in private practice doesn't mean you need a business partner.
Right.
My brain immediately just went when Kelly was talking like, oh, that's a good episode title. Like, just because you're alone, get some friends. Like, I might use that as the tagline. It's so true. And I appreciate y'all sharing that light, because I think so many people coming out of school, I think it's just a scary place to think about something that you don't know what you don't know. And it would be easier to do together. And I'm like, go rent an office together. Don't go into business together. Like, this is a very different thing. And again, I'm glad you offered the school for, all aspects of this, because it's the business side that people really just don't understand.
Now more than ever, there are more resources than ever before on how to build a business. I mean, it used to be a paperback book and some call-in webinars. We have come a long way in terms of free resources.
Mhm.
I mean, the amount of coaches in this industry has grown by a lot. There's tons out there, so it's not like you can't get the support is all I'm saying. It is there for you. It's ripe for the picking. Is that what they say?
Yeah. And I think that's the other part. I don't know why this is popping up, but therapists, we've been the worst paid master's degrees for a long time. Right. And as we've had more like art therapy, movement therapy, LPC versus MFT. You just see like at the top 10 list of worst paid master degree just expands. It's just all therapists. But for a long time, chiropractic was in the top of it. And I remember I was having a conversation with a chiropractor about it, that they were the top master's degree. And I was like, why? And he said, well, about 25% of what we learned in school was about how to actually do chiropractic. The other, like 75%, was how to run a chiropractic private practice. Well, what happened was over several years, people were like, oh, wait, you know what? We want to create chiropractic schools that really go more into the holistic healing. And so they took more and more of the business side of things out. So what you've seen over time is that the income for chiropractors has just gone down over the years, right? And so I think that's a place. Like I wish that there was a way to fully integrate this into a master's or doctoral program. If any master's programs want to talk to us, let us know. But like this is the piece. When we empower therapists, it changes not just their income for this year, it changes their income for decades to come. And it changes the income of their employees for decades to come. And it changes the next generation. Yeah.
And it changes the quality of work that's done throughout the generation so that it has a longer reach because you can do better work. And I do wonder where that narrative comes from in grad school and agency work, where it's like there's so much fearfulness and just scarcity mindset. Nobody can be successful at this. It's almost preached like private practice is too much of a risk. You are too new to the field. I see Miranda's like eyes lighting up. And I reached out to my grad school program and I was like, hey, can I come in and talk about private practice? I'll do it for free. I'd love to, share this wisdom. And they're like, nobody would be interested in that. And I'm like, but several grad school students have taken my coaching program. So that's bullshit.
And this is the thing is, who are the people that are teaching at the local grad schools? There's a couple of groups. There are researchers who did not ever want to go into private practice. And then there are often people who tried private practice and failed and that are doing this. People that have successful, thorough private practices often do not have time and energy to also go teach on the side. The financial numbers are just so low. So you end up with this really skewed viewpoint. And there are schools, like some of the private schools, where they kind of require that somebody be in private practice to go and teach, but those are kind of few and far between. But I taught at I taught at the grad school level. I mean, at the end of the day, once you graded papers and such, it was like $20 an hour. Like it was not far into private practice that I was like, this math does not add up. And like, I'm out, like it skews the whole thing.
That's such good perspective. I hope people listening can hear that. And chiropractors, if you're listening, I'm sorry.
I know. I was like, Miranda's like laughing a little. And I'm like, oh, some poor chiropractor's like, it's not that funny.
Like, fuck, I went into the wrong schooling. The last thing that I remember this very vividly, like intensely. And the last thing that my agency job supervisor told me when I quit to go into private practice was that you'll be back in 30 days. Nobody makes it on their own. And I have used that as motivation, for the last 5 years. And I will always use that as motivation because I'm like, who the fuck says this? I'm sorry that you're jealous or resentful that I'm leaving, but ultimately that's so self-limiting. And I think that that's the narrative that we really have to work through in our profession, that we limit ourselves. And thankfully, there are a lot of great programs and mentors and coaches and support and everyone that's out there doing the work and, doing it in a really value-driven way. So
did you send a tax return last year?
She's still a friend of mine on Facebook, so I'll post every now and again like that story, and I'm like, I hope you saw that. Like, I hope you're reading this, and I hope you're still at that agency job.
I would just tag her and say, hey, it's been more than 30 days. I think I'm good.
Yeah, I think I'm okay now. I think things are looking up. So yeah, it's a lot of limiting beliefs in our industry. I did want to just ask, while we are winding down, just tell the audience where they can find more of ZynnyMe and how they can get connected to all of the wonderful services and resources that you have.
Well, you can go to ZynnyMe.com. That's Z as in zebra, Y as in yellow, N as in Nancy. This is why it's not a good name, NYME.com. Do you know how many times we've had to spell that when we're giving our email addresses to people? Like, it's bad. So
ZynnyMe.com/free is where you can find well over 10 hours of free training. We have a free community that is not on Facebook. I know yours is on Facebook. We're on Mighty Networks because we like to keep it a little separate. So it's very focused on business and private practice building. And yeah,
Free CEs.
do a lot of that.
I hope you all heard that too. It'll be in the show notes where to find them. But yeah, and also I regret being on Facebook and building that group, so large on that platform. So good for you for being on Mighty Networks. And yeah, I appreciate everyone listening to the All Things Private Practice podcast. New episodes out every Monday where we're talking with industry experts about fears, failures, challenges, and triumphs, because that's the most important piece. We will see everyone next Monday. We release episodes every Monday morning.